Good night, everyone. So where are we tonight? So last week we would have completed chapter 7.5. We're not going to go through the homework questions. We're not going to do the exercises. We're going to save that for next week. So if you didn't do the questions for 7.4 and the exercise, and the questions for 7.5 and the exercises also, you have that to complete for next week. So today we're going to start with 7.6 charts, 7.7 printing, and then finally importing. And that should be basically the end of content, I think, for us. Let's see. I think 7.8 is the final chapter. Yeah, that is the final chapter. So next week should be our final class for the term. We're gonna review all the exercises. Well, not all. Basically, from 8 all the way to exercise 19. We're gonna review that next week. And these questions here from all of these chapters, we are going to review those also. So today, as mentioned, we're starting with chapter 7.6. We're looking at charts. So if I open back 7.3, so remember I told you guys that spreadsheet, the chapters are like in a logical order. So 7.3, at this stage, you're entering data, you're creating your functions, you're creating your formulas to do your calculation. That's what we learned here, how to use functions and formulas. Then in 7.4, we learned how to format those data that we would have entered, all of our formulas, our functions, and so on. 7.5, we learned about the different ways that we can search for those data. We learned about sorting, filtering. We learned how to use our pivot tables, pivot charts. All of those are used to basically locate data, summarize data, to present our data. Now, another way we can present our data is using a chart. So we're going to be looking at what are the different types of charts and how can we create a chart, and basically what other aspects of the chart we need to take note of. So to get us started with some basic information about charts, we're gonna have let's start to the bottom. Tamika, can you read for us?
Yes, sir. Charts. Graphing or charting data is a very useful way to show patterns, comparisons, and trends in data. Instead of having rows and columns of data, a graph can make a strong visual impact. This often makes the data much easier to understand. You can create a number of chart types with Excel. The major chart types and their purposes are shown in the table 7.3.
Great.
Ha-
Yes, thank you. So, um, in your exam or for understanding purposes, you need to know, why are we creating charts in spreadsheets? What's the purpose of a chart? Well, as I underlined there, it's useful for showing patterns in our data. Remember, so far we looked at our spreadsheet has data inside of it already. We already built many tables. We already imagine, like, if we're a business, if we're an organization, we already built a spreadsheet with a lot of tables inside of it. A lot of sheets are being used storing data. Now, you're not going to want to show persons, let me see, google.com, spreadsheets. Let me see if I give you guys a visual example. So say, for example, something like this here. This is when I talk about a spreadsheet having a lot of data inside of it. like what you're seeing right now. Spreadsheets packed with information like this here. And imagine the tables are much larger. There's a lot more sheets inside of this one file and so on. This is what I've always been talking about. Your spreadsheet is full of data inside of it. Now, your chart, if you're going to show somebody the data, a more effective way of showing a person data is not by showing them a table. You want to give them some form of visual impact, and that is the purpose of the chart. The chart will give a strong visual impact. So you might have a question like, why would you choose to present your information as a chart instead of using a table or some other format? Well, justification, it would have a greater impact on whoever is looking at the data. It will have more visual impact than looking at a table. Because when you look at the table, for example, in this case here, you have to basically analyze the information. You got to look at the headings, you got to look at the different rows, you got to manually analyze everything. Try to figure out what is person really showing me. But with a chart now, let's say for example this chart here. With a chart now, it has a much greater visual impact. You can clearly see a title at the top. You can see access titles, a title at the bottom here, another title over here telling you what's the types of data. The entire chart title is at the top there. The information for what each column is at the bottom here. The values on the side, and you can clearly identify what each column represents. So it has much greater visual impact than actually looking at a table. So that is basically why we would use a chart. And as mentioned already, the chart is used for showing patterns in our data, showing comparisons, showing trends, and so on. Have any of you ever created a chart before in spreadsheet? No one?
Yes,
So we
sir.
had to do one for EDPM.
Okay, good. Was it hard?
Yes, sir, because I didn't know what I was doing.
Yes, sir. At first, I don't even know how I did it. It just happened.
I can agree with Randallin on that one.
But hopefully after today, you should have the skills of creating any type of chart that you're required to do to build. So, in addition to building the charts, to creating a chart, you need to understand something very important. There are different types of charts, and you need to know what is the purpose of the different type of charts. So, not because a chart look nice, you're gonna choose it. So, for example, not because this one look nice with a little line on it, you're gonna choose that one. Or this one look like a nice mountain, you're gonna choose that one. You choose charts based on the data you want to present. So, for example, you would choose a pie chart if you want to show the relationship among data as as a part of a whole. So, like for example, if you're gonna show percentage to represent your data, then you would want to use a pie chart because um, the entire pie is gonna represent that 100%. And visually, you would even have to look at the actual percentages in each column. Visually, you could already tell that this part here, this green that you're seeing here, it has a much larger percentage than the other two combined over here. You don't even have to look at the actual values. So the pie chart, it's useful for that type of data. Now, what about the bar and the column? They're useful for comparing values at a given point. So, um, like this example over here, uh, we have different points. Like for example, we have a $50 point, 100, 150, 200, 250. So we have different levels, different points. And the bar and the column are useful for marking off or indicating those different points. What other columns do we have? Charts do we have? We have the line and the scatter. They're both similar, just like the column and the bar. The line is used to show in trends or change of value over time. So um, if you're going to show a trend in data, like for example, if you want to know um, how much money Randlin is spending for the entire week. So from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, how much money did she spend over that 1 week period? A nice line graph, for example, if we draw a nice line graph, something like this here, we could clearly see was her spending pattern. We can see that how at this point here she started off low, then this day she spent high, then this day she went down back low, this day she barely went up a little bit, and then she went down back low again. So it's a nice graph to show trend in data, how it changed over time. So, and then we also have the area. It's similar to line, and it shows the amount of change over time also. So those are some of the types of charts that you have. Pie, bar, column, line, scatter. They're the more popular ones that you would choose from. But obviously, there are other types of charts that you can choose from. If you go to Insert, the Insert tab, and you click on Recommended, we don't have any data. So let's try that again. Click on Recommended. And if you go to All Charts, you're going to see all of the charts that we have here. Column, pie, line, bar, area, XY, map, stock, surface, so much graphs and charts that we have. So whenever you're going to choose one, you have to think of what is the data that you're going to be putting in the chart and which would be the most effective chart to represent that data. Are we following so far?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Great. So let's continue the reading and let's have Sierra.
Creating a chart. Since the chart is used to
No,
illustrate specific data,
on the left hand side.
and charts may be 2 or 3 dimensional. A 2D chart displays a horizontal x-axis and a vertical y-axis, while a 3D chart displays 3 axes, x, y, and z. A chart is linked to the worksheet data that it is created from, and it is updated automatically when the worksheet data changes. A chart is a pictorial or visual representation of data contained in the Excel worksheet. The idea of plotting the idea of plotting information in a chart is to be able to analyze data more quickly without having to interpret a set of data. The chart can be embedded in the worksheet or a separate chart sheet. When this is done, the chart is an individual worksheet, but the chart sheet has no cells and no data or formulae may be entered into the chart sheet. If, if a chart is set up as a chart sheet, it must be printed on a page by itself. The chart may be printed alone or with the worksheet data.
Great. So there's a lot of points here that you guys should take note of. Firstly, we have two, I won't call them types, but it's how much information that is presented. So we can call them kinds, like two kinds of charts. We have the 2D chart and the 3D chart. It's basically how much information you can put in the chart. So a normal chart is going to be a 2D chart. It's going to have a horizontal x-axis. So we should know horizontal is left to right, something flat, and vertical, the y-axis is up and down, basically, top to bottom. So if we look at the chart here that we have, can anybody say which is which? So for example, types of plan, is that the vertical axis or the horizontal axis? What do you guys think?
Sir, can you please repeat the question?
All right, let me rephrase. This here is your axis. This is one axis. This here is another axis. So we're talking about the 2D chart and the 3D chart. They have axes, and we have the x-axis, the y-axis, and the z-axis. A 2D chart has only two axes, the x-axis and the y-axis. So this chart that you're seeing here is a 2D chart because it only has two axes. So the question I asked is, which is the horizontal and which is the vertical? What do you guys think?
Investment is vertical and type of plan is horizontal.
Anybody else? You guys agree, disagree?
Sir, I agree with Jaheem.
Right? Why do you agree? What's your reasoning?
Sir, because type of plan is horizontal and investment is vertical.
Great, it's that simple. So this data here, it's horizontal, so it's going left to right. And this one over here is vertical, it's going up and down. So those are the locations of your x and y axis. It actually doesn't matter which chart, 2D, 3D, it's going to be the same location. Vertical, x, you should know this from maths. It's basically the same from maths. X is always going to be horizontal and y is always going to be vertical. So what would z be?
Sir, diagonal.
Diagonal?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure if that is true or not. Anybody wants to agree or disagree? Because I would have said depths, but I'm not sure. Is that axis in spreadsheet? Vertical axis, horizontal axis depict data in two dimensions. That axis takes the assimilation perspective data once it in the third dimension. So what does a 3D chart look like? Yeah, so I would have said depth also. You can, I guess you can say diagonal. Not sure. I'll do some more research and clarify. Are you like 100% sure it refers to diagonal, or is that in maths? It's diagonal, refer to diagonal.
Sir, I'm not 100% sure. I just guessed it because if one is horizontal, one is vertical, the other one is diagonal.
Okay. Well, usually when we say something 3D, yeah, it's right here. 3D. Usually when we say something 3D, the Z or that third axis usually represents depth. So it's no longer flat, as you can see here. The chart is no longer flat, it now has depth. So basically meaning there's a front and a back. So you can see that this is the front of the chart and this is the back of the chart. And you can see different angles and so on. That's what it's mean by depth. It's not flat. So those are the three axes. X is horizontal, Y is vertical, and Z is going to be depth. Great. So 2D only has 2 and 3D only has 3. So that's the first point there you should take note of. The second point, your chart updates automatically. It's important to remember, because if you guys can remember when we looked at the pivot table, remember the pivot table is created from another table. Pivot tables are created from another table. And can anyone remember, does it update automatically?
No, sir.
No, it does not update automatically. How do you update it? How do you update the pivot table? Anyone remember?
So you have to reset it.
Refresh it. Right. Reset. Refresh or reset?
Right.
Yes, that's correct. We have to refresh it. So that's how we would get it to get the pivot table to refresh, to update. So the pivot table does not automatically update. Now, the pivot chart, we looked at creating that last week also. The pivot chart, does that automatically update or does not? Which you guys, can anyone remember? No one? Well, just as how we just learned that charts, in this 7.6 here, that charts automatically update. And it's actually the same for the pivot chart. So all charts, doesn't matter whether it's a pivot chart or it's a normal chart, please remember, they update their data automatically. So, for example, if we create a simple chart, all right, we can look at that later when we actually look at creating a chart. So just know that it updates automatically. Now, as mentioned already, a chart is for pictorial or visual representation of your data. That's why we use charts. So that's your third point there. And then, why also do we use charts? Because they allow us to quickly analyze our data. I showed you guys that spreadsheet with a lot of data inside of it, and with a lot of tables with data. And in order for you to understand it, you would have to go and analyze it. You have to look at it, interpret it, and so on. But with a chart, it's already visual. You can already see what is on the chart. So you don't have to go and analyze. You can already quickly read the information. That's the fourth point there. The fifth point is that charts can be embedded or they can be on a separate sheet. I think at this point I need to start creating a chart. So let me look at creating a chart, and then we're gonna come back to that point here. So our third point, second point, and our fourth point. So how do we create a chart? We'll have to look at that first. I'm gonna create a simple table. So first we need a table to create a chart. Name and grades. Brandlin, Pavani, Kimiko, Jahim. So grades 50, 90, 30, 70. Good. So we have a table here with grades. Now we want to create a chart from it. How do we create this chart from this table here? So we would have learned already that when you click on a cell, it would detect the table. I'm not sure if it actually is going to work. Let me see. Recommended charts. And yeah, notice it already detected the table. it detected grades. Notice your names at the bottom here. It's actually showing you a preview. Your names at the bottom here, and the scale is on the left hand side here, 0 to 100. It's a accurate scale because 90 is our highest here. So, but if you had wanted to highlight your table because you want to highlight exactly what's going to be in your chart, say for instance you had another column. What else column will we have? Maybe percentage. We're just going to make up something. Percentage. But we're just making up something here. So if you click on this, click on any cell, and we click on the chart, it's going to try to add in all the information. Now say for instance you don't want that percentage column to be added in. So in that case, you would need to highlight what you want in the chart. So if I just want name and grades inside of my chart, that is all I'm going to highlight. So I highlighted that, and I'm going to click on the recommended chart, or you can actually click on any one of these options out here. This would be the column or the bar. That one would be hierarchy. This one's the line or the area. Or if you don't know which one to choose, that's why you can choose the recommended charts. So they would give you some recommended charts based on the type of data, a pie, column, a bar. But if you don't like those, you can always go to all charts and basically select which one you want. So if you don't like that type of column, you can change the column if you want. Notice here we have a 3D column. So these ones here are the 3D columns. Notice it has depth. So notice this one's a 2D. It's flat. The chart is flat. The column is flat. But when we go to the 3D, notice the column has some depth to it. You can see some shadows and you can see the side. So that's the 3D chart, how it looks like. So it's simple. You just click on any one of the charts that you want, anywhere. You click OK, and voila, you've created a chart here. It's that simple. So going back to the points that we mentioned so far, we mentioned that 2, the charts update automatically. So if you change information in the table, say Randlin, instead of 50, she got 70, notice her column went up. Or say for instance, I delete Randlin. Notice her name disappeared. If I delete the grade, the entire column disappeared now. So your chart, if I delete everything, your chart updates automatically based on the data that you would have created it from. In addition to that, we were saying that a chart can be embedded or separate. So that's another point there. That's a 5th point. Your chart can be either embedded or separate. What do we mean by that? Well, embedded basically means what you're seeing right now. It is placed on top of the worksheet. If you notice, it's not in any sort of cell. It's not restricted by any cell, column, row, or anything of that sort. It can freely go anywhere. It's basically hovering over the cells. So that is an embedded chart. Once it has the cells, the worksheet in the background. Now, what is a chart sheet? That's the other part of point number 5. A chart could be on a chart sheet. What is a chart sheet? Well, a chart sheet is basically a chart on a sheet by itself. So how do we get that? Well, you would need to right click on a blank area of your chart and then go to move chart from a blank area and then go to move chart and you're going to select new sheet and then you're going to click OK and it's going to create a sheet with the chart inside of it. And if you notice, there is no rows, there is no columns, there is no cells, there is nothing. It's just emptiness. That is a chart sheet. Once you're not seeing any rows, any columns, or anything of that sort, and all you're seeing is a chart, that is a chart sheet. So we looked at 5 points here so far. Are you guys following in all 5 so far?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Anyone with any questions before we move on? Any questions? All right, so let's move on to point number 6 now. When this is done, the chart is an individual worksheet where the chart has no cells. So as mentioned, the chart sheet, it has no cells, no data, no formula. It can be entered, no data, no formula can be entered on the chart sheet. It's just a plain sheet for that chart. Now, it says here that you can print the chart alone or you can print it with its data. So how can we print the chart alone and or print it with its data? Well, let's go back to the sheet. Let's recreate the chart. Okay, we have a chart here. Now, how can we print the chart by itself? Or how can we print the data and the chart together? Well, if you click anywhere in the sheet, or basically, let me look at printing the chart first. So if you click on the chart, notice the chart is going to be highlighted. We have some circles all the way around it. Now, how do we print this chart alone? Well, first you need to basically highlight it. So that's what I'm doing right now. It's highlighted. And then you're going to want to go to print. And if you notice, only the chart is showing up. So when you click on the charts and you go to print, only the chart was selected to be printed. Now, how can we print this chart with the data beside it? Well, you would have to click anywhere. It doesn't matter once you do not click on the chart itself. Click anywhere, doesn't matter where, and you go to File, and you go to Print, and you can notice the table that you created and the chart that you would have created here. If you notice, it's overlapping the other page, so it's going over to page 2 there. So this is where you have to be careful with the page layout, because remember, you're not seeing the pages. If you actually look very carefully, you guys noticing this broken line here? And by noticing it, there's some broken lines here, right here.
Yes, sir.
Right, so that there is actually indicating our pages. I've actually never noticed that. I wonder if it's a feature. But there's something that turns this on, this line here. You guys can check it out in your spreadsheet and see if you're seeing it. Let's shift it over to that one there. Yeah, so that line there is indicating that's the page size. So if you go directly to the edge of it, I'm going to go directly to the edge. And notice I'm going to be under my table also. Let's see who's joining. Jocelyn. And where am I? So I'm at the very edge of my page here. I'm going to go to print. And notice the chart is neatly on the single page there. So that's something else you have to be careful with when you're printing a spreadsheet, that the information fits nicely on a page. Great. So that's how you print the chart alone and how you print a chart with data. So that's basically point number 6 there. So we looked at 6 points in these 3 chapters here. Good. All right. Let's see. I think that's just a bunch of information on how to create a chart. Yeah, it just looks like that. So I already showed you guys how to create a chart. I told you guys that you simply highlight what data you want in your chart. Now let's look at another situation. I told you guys that if you want only name and grades, you would highlight those two, only name and grades, so that they can be in your chart. Now, how can you say, for instance, in your chart, you want name and percentage, but you don't want grades. Because right now, if I create this chart with what I highlighted there, everything is going to be in it. Name, grade, and percentage. If you notice at the bottom here, we have grades and percentage. But I don't want grades in my chart. What can I do? Well, we should remember this from earlier when selecting. If you want to select non-adjacent cells, anybody remember which key you're supposed to hold on? No one remembers? When you're selecting non-adjacent cells? Well, that key is the control key. So please remember that. It's the same for if you're selecting any random cell. Like for example, this here. Like this here. Notice I'm highlighting these random cells because I'm holding down that control key. If I did not hold down that control key, whatever I highlight is going to disappear from the one before. I could only highlight one continuous grid of cells. But if I don't want to highlight anything that is linked to each other, like for example like that, I have to hold the control key. So if I want only name and percentage inside of my chart, I would have to hold the control key, highlight name, column, I'm still holding the control key, and then highlight percentage also. So then I'm going to go to chart. I think it's because of this gray area at the bottom there. So what I'm going to do is click on name, hold on control, and then highlight everything. Good, that should be it. Go to recommended, all chart. Give me a second. This thing is not working out. So that's I think that should be it. Yeah, that's it. So it's a bit technical, not really technical, but what actually happened there was it actually highlighted it didn't continuously highlight the column. When I clicked on percentage, because you guys might get this problem later on. When I clicked on percentage, I had to go over to the other column and start highlighting there. But if you notice, I have to deselect percentage in order to get a continuous highlight. Because remember, you want to highlight it as one. So what actually happens is that when I hold control after selecting percentage, I can't highlight from it. It doesn't allow me. So notice I'm trying to do that. It's not allowing me. And if I go from the bottom here, even though it looks like it's highlighting, it's not continuous. It's actually, you can think of it like a border between percentage and the 78 happening here. So when I go over here, notice you can actually see it. It looks like a border here. And when you go to chart, we're getting this error here. It's not giving us a correct chart because we didn't highlight it continuously, that column. So to fix that, whatever column you click on, or even if you click outside, you basically highlight the column continuously. You deselect whatever you started highlighting first, and remember, still holding the control key, and you basically highlight the other column. Are you guys following?
Yes, sir.
Anyone confused about what I just said? You want me to go it over, or are you good? All right, I'll take it as you guys are good. Somebody was saying something?
Excuse me, sir. Akila has a question if you'd like to ask.
Go ahead.
A while back, when we were doing activity on spreadsheet for IT, sorry, example, there was a
I'm
question
I'm
about
not hearing her clearly.
the charge for the fact that I were doing to edit.
Sierra, you
He's
wanna
asking about the legend. If there's a way to edit it.
She's asking about the legends for the chart.
Yes, sir.
If there's a way to edit it.
If there's a way to edit it on the worksheet.
Is she asking if there's a way to edit the legends in the charts?
Yes, sir.
Um, Edit the legends. The only way you get different legends in a chart is when you highlight more than one data. So yeah, I think after you created a chart, you can actually modify the chart. We're actually going to look at that just now. So we're going to come to that question just now. That deals with modifying the chart. We're going to come to that just now. So we're still looking at creating the chart. So we're looking at creating a chart with two non-adjacent columns. So remember, I hold the control key and I highlighted the name and percentage, and then I'm going to go to chart, choose my column chart there, and notice I have my chart here. I have percentage at the top, the name with percentage data. And notice when you click on a chart, it shows you the data that you use to create it. Notice it's right here. So we can know, anybody can know what data you use to create a chart. If you accurately selected the right data to create this chart here. Now, let's see. Good. So let me look at Akila's question now. Akila was asking about modifying a chart, the legend. So in order for us to get legends, we need to highlight 3 columns or more. Go to insert, column, and notice we're going to have a legend at the bottom. So now we have a legend here. So if we go to, basically the only way you're going to edit the legend is you can change the name. So if you don't want this to be percentage, or I guess it's using the name from the from this here. Yeah, it's using the name from the table, the legend. It's using the name from the table. So that's how you edit your legend. So does that answer your question, Akila? All right. What else about our charts? You guys need to know about. Let's see. So we looked at creating a chart. Now, after you would have created your chart, you need to add elements to your charts. And these are the list of the elements that you can see on the screen here. So let's go back to the bottom. Okay, good. So these are the parts of the chart that you guys should take note of. One, we have the area comprising the chart. So if you look at this diagram here, so if you notice, there is like an area, this outer square, and then there's a chart inside of it. So if you look at ours, you can notice that you can actually shrink the chart inside of the area. And I'm sure you guys encounter this when you try to move the chart. You actually click on this part in here and you wonder why the chart is not moving and does this part inside is moving. Never happened to any one of you? No? Well, that is because if it has not, this is happening because the chart, this is the actual chart that you see in here that I'm moving, is in a chart area, this blank white area here. So that's why when you want to move it, you need to click on the blank area. And that is how the chart will move. So you have the chart area there. We have the plot area. So the plot area, number 2, is going to be where your chart is located, basically. How you're plotting the data, where the data is in the chart. Number 3, you have the data points that are plotted. So number 3, where are your data points? So these are your data points, indicating how much each data is. You have the optional label for the data points. So the label above the column, the line, whatever the case may be, that is called a data label. We also have the vertical axis. So number 5, vertical axis. We have the horizontal axis. We already looked at that also, vertical and horizontal. Vertical axis title and horizontal axis title. So investment, this is the vertical axis title, and this is the horizontal axis title. We have the chart title as number 9, and we have the vertical axis grid lines, that's this data here, and the horizontal axis grid lines, that data there, that point there. And then lastly, we have the legend here. Are you guys following and all that?
Yes, sir. Yes.
All right. Now here's a question. This might be a question on your paper. If you notice right now, this chart here has a legend. Is it necessary to have a legend for one type of data?
I guess so.
I didn't get that clearly. Could you repeat one more time?
Yes, sir.
It's necessary? Why is it necessary?
No data.
It tells you the type of data. That's what you said?
Yes, sir.
Alright, that is true. That is true. The legend tells you the type of data. But for a table, for a chart that only has one type of data, it might not be that necessary. For example, remember the title tells you the data. So these are plans that this investment here is offering. So we can tell that this data here is referring to a plan that the investment is offering. So in some instances, if you create your access title properly enough, you can actually see it. So like for instance, this word premium, you could have actually put it here and say premium plan instead of saying type of plan. That would have been a more better access title. But in this situation, I would say the legend is necessary because it doesn't actually tell you what type of plan the legend here is telling you. But once again, if the access title accurately tells you what is the type of data, what is exactly in the chart, then if it's one type of data, a legend would not be that necessary to have. If it's two types of data, then that would be more appropriate. Alright, so where are we now? We're looking at modifying a chart, we're looking at moving, sizing, deleting, changing chart data. So we're going to be looking at all the different ways that we can modify the chart now. So we already looked at moving the chart. You have to click on the chart area and you move it around. When you click on the chart, you're going to see some handles where you can drag it to resize it. So that's how you change the size of the chart. So once again, the actual chart, the plot area, you can resize that also. As you see fit. We looked at moving the chart. So when you right click on the chart and you move, you can say move to a certain sheet or move to an entirely new sheet, which is a chart sheet. So say for instance you didn't want to move it to a chart sheet. Let me look back again. Was a chart sheet. So the new sheet is the chart sheet. So notice it's on a sheet by itself. That's a chart sheet. I'm going to undo. And I'm going to Alright, let me see if I right click here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to create sheet 2. I'm going to right click here. Click on move. And I'm going to say move to sheet 2. So notice I'm moving the object in sheet 2. So notice it moved the entire sheet here. So it's no longer a chart sheet. So that's how you can move it to a sheet if you want it to be on a sheet or if you want it to be on a chart sheet. What else do we have? Now, you created your charts, but your chart needs the additional information. Your charts need the axis title, the vertical title, horizontal title, whatever the case may be. It needs data labels and so on. How do we add those? Well, there's a plus icon here, and we can manually add in what we need. So we want data labels, we want data table, all of that we can add in exactly what we need. Now, say for instance you created a chart and it doesn't have all the necessary parts that you need. And instead of going here and manually clicking on each one of them, what you can do is go to the click on design at the top. Notice the design tab, and then go to quick layouts. So to the very left you're going to see quick layouts, and if you hover your cursor over each one of them, you can notice it adds in different elements, and it actually tells you what the elements for those layouts are. So notice this one here, layout number 5. It is chart title, data table, vertical title, access, and so on. Now, so each one is going to be different. Number eight, I actually like number eight because it adds everything that you need. It adds the chart title, it adds the legend to the right, it adds the axis titles and the grid lines also. So actually that's number nine. Yeah, number nine is the one I would normally choose because it basically adds everything that you need. And after you would have added the necessary title, you simply click on them. You simply click on it. So edit it inside of that box here. So this is my chart title. And then you go to the axis title, put your cursor, delete the information. This is my horizontal axis title. That's how you edit the axis title. So we already talked about editing the legend. It is based on the table that you created it from. So the headings were used as the legends and so on. Now if we go back to design, we also have add chart elements at the top here. So it's the same as that plus to the bottom. This plus over here. We can add different elements here also. Chart title, axis title, and so on. Now if you want to change the design, you can do so also. Different designs. If you want to change the data, so say for instance you already created a chart, you already designed the chart, you don't want to recreate it, you can change the data inside of it. So say for instance you accidentally selected the wrong column and you already well designed your table, you already put in your chart title, axis title, you already designed everything. Instead of deleting it and start over, you can change the data. So if you notice there's a select data here and it shows you what was added. So say for instance I don't want percentage anymore, I can check it off, click OK, and notice I don't have percentage there anymore. So if I want to add it back in, select data, I can actually go and edit it. Notice there's an edit option here and I can say basically the heading. So I want percentage and the values on the percentage here. So basically I'm selecting the new column. Okay, okay, and I now have percentage there now instead of the grade. So that's how you can change your data. You can even change your chart type. So say for instance you pick the wrong chart, you pick column, but say now you want a bar. You can click on bar, click OK, and you now have a bar chart. What else do we have? We have move chart at the top here. We already looked at that. We have format where you can basically format it even more. Great. Are you guys following so far?
Yes, sir.
Any questions from anyone? How do we delete a chart? So you simply click on the chart and you can press backspace and that deletes it. Or even the delete key, that deletes it also. I think if you right click on it, no, there's no delete option. So you simply highlight it and you delete or backspace the chart and that would remove it. Great. So that's basically it on chapter 7.6. We looked at the different types of charts. We looked at how to create a chart, and then we looked at how to modify the chart. Any questions before we go on to 7.7? We also have two more short chapters and then we'll wrap up. No questions? All right, let's go on to 7.7. We're not gonna read the chapter. Uh, so it's basically about printing. We're gonna go to the option, the print option, and then we're gonna go through each one of the options so as to what they are. But as this first paragraph says, Microsoft Excel provides a number of optional settings to change the appearance of the printed page. You can change the margin. So these are some options that you have. Change the margin, adjust orientation, add headers, photos, modify other features. You can do all of that before you print your spreadsheet. So we're in our spreadsheets. We have our table. Let's add back our charts because we want to have a chart. Now, how do we print? So I'm going to move this back over so it's in view. How do we print? Well, we go to File, and then we click on Print. Or we could have used a shortcut. Anybody remember what was the shortcut for print?
Sir, Control P.
Correct. Control and P. So if you hold Control and P, that's going to open the print option. So this is basically where we are looking at right now. What are the different options in this print area? So if you guys want to make some notes on what each option is about, because the chapter actually it covers a few, but I don't think it covers all of it. So you guys are going to read through that, and I'm going to go through all of the options that you see in here. So firstly, top left, you have the option to print. So if you click on this here, it's going to print the document. Next, you have how many copies of the document do you want. Next, we have selecting the printer. Which printer do you want to print up? If you have your printer, you would select it. But if you want to print a PDF, you would use this option here. Let's click on printer properties. So in here, we can set the orientation. We can say the page should be landscape. Okay. I notice it turned the page landscape now. So notice we have more space horizontally. Go back to printer properties and notice the advanced option here. So we can say what type of paper we want. You guys should have learned the different sizes of paper. So we can set the different types of paper. How much we basically want to print there also. So those are the options there. Now next we have this option here. We have three options here. Basically it's about what can we print from the spreadsheet. So the first option is to print the active sheet. So whatever sheet we have open, so just like how we have an active cell, we also have an active sheet. You can only be in one sheet at a time. So whatever sheet you click print on, that sheet will be the main focus. That sheet will be the active sheet, and it's going to print only that one sheet. Now if you want to print the entire workbook, that's when you would click on this option here, the second option. When you want to print the entire spreadsheet, you're going to click on print entire workbook. Now lastly, if you have a certain selection that you want to print from, you can basically more than likely just highlight where you want to print. So for example, that's all, and then go to file and then go to print. And notice the chart doesn't show up because I highlighted a certain area. And if you notice, in selection is selected here because I highlighted what I wanted to print here. So say for instance, I highlight this blank area here. Let's go on the top here. I highlight that blank area, go to print, file. Notice nothing on my printout area here because it's only a blank area that I highlighted here. Alright. Let's go back to print. So we looked at this here because so we can set page numbers from what page to what page you want to print from. Now, an important term to remember is what is collated and what is uncollated. It's important to remember. And if you notice here at the very bottom, it actually gives you a nice representation of what they mean. So, say for instance, you guys have to print a brochure. You would have already learned what is a brochure, how many pages a brochure has, and so on. So say for instance, you have to print 10 copies of this one brochure, and this brochure has 5 pages. So that's about 5 times 10, that's 50 pages. That's going to be printed. Now, when you print, say you're sending all of these brochures to print at the same time. When you print it, the paper can come out in one of two ways. It could come out collated or uncollated. So if you notice, uncollated basically means that all of the page ones are going to be printed and then it's going to come out. Then it's going to start printing all the page 2s. Then it's going to start printing all of the page 3. But if some of you realize that if you do it this way, then that means you would have to manually sort out all the pages of that brochure. So you would have to go and put all of those pages together to make that brochure. Whereas the collated, it would actually print the brochure, you can say, for you. So it's going to print the 1 to 5. And then it's going to print another 1 to 5. And then print another 1 to 5. So that when you pull the pages from the printer, it's already in the correct order. Are you guys clear on that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Alright, so that is collated and uncollated there. Once again, we have the orientation there. We can set what type of paper we want. We can set our margins. We can say scaling or no scaling. So say for instance, if there was a lot of information on a page, we could say fit to one page. We can say fit all columns, fit all rows, or we can say no scaling. So we want to print it exactly as it is from the spreadsheet. Let's click on page setup now and see what options we have here. So once again, we have orientation here. We have scaling, so we can fit the information to the page. We have more page size here. We have page quality, print quality basically. Basically the quality of the printouts. Notice this is 600 dpi. DPI stands for dots per inch. Dots per inch. And basically, the higher the DPI, the higher the printout quality. So please remember that. The higher the DPI, the higher the printout quality. We can say print page number. What else do we have? We have margin. We can set the different margins. And notice this one is a nice one here, header and footer. If you guys notice, in spreadsheets, unlike Microsoft Word, where you can, if you have a table in Word, you can go to the top here, actually in the margin, and type in some form of header. But in spreadsheets, you cannot do that. But you actually can. You can do that in this area here. So I can say custom header, and I can say, if you notice at the top here, this is left section, center section, and right section. So in the very center, I'm going to say center heading. And over here, I'm going to say right heading, so you guys can see all of them. This one's the left heading. And I'm going to click OK. I'm going to do custom footer also. So I'm going to say left footer, left head, foot, sorry, center header, center footer, and this is the right footer. Okay. And when we click OK, that is actually going to appear on every page that you would print. So say for instance, just like in Word, if you want a header to appear on every single page that you would print, that is how you add a header in spreadsheet. Header and footer. So it's page setup and you have header and footer here. You can say print it on different and odd pages, first page, whatever the case may be. We have options there, that goes back there. Sheet, we can say print area, but that's basically you'd have to highlight like what I did earlier. You can say print the grid lines. So if you want to see the grid lines, you click OK. Let me go back to print area. So I'm going to print this here. Let me highlight this here. Go to print. Okay, so we have a table there. So go to page setup, sheet. So I'm going to take off the grid lines. Okay. Notice I don't have the grid lines anymore. But if you want the grid lines, you have to go to page setup, go to sheet, and click on grid lines here. Notice I'm seeing the grid lines for my spreadsheet here. What other options do we have in sheet? We have printing in black and white, printing draft quality, row and column headings. If you want to add some comments, if you want to print the cell errors, you can also do that here also. So those are basically most of the options that you'll come across when it comes to printing your spreadsheet. Are you guys following and all that?
Yes, sir.
The rest of you following?
Yes, sir.
Alright, so we're gonna move on to our final chapter now. So we're finished with 7.7 and we're gonna move on to our final chapter, 7.8, which deals with importing files and linking data. So not a short chapter. Importing files and linking files in Excel. So what is importing files into Excel? Let's see. Akila said no. What was that for? Is that no to no questions or something else? Shaniko, are you there? Alright, can you read for us? Importing.
You can import files. You can import files from an outside source into Excel, providing you have a way of distinguishing one column of data from another. When you select the File Open menu option, you can change the files of type to a text file or other required file type. When you choose the file you want, Excel will take you through the text import wizard. Step 1 of the wizard will let you decide if the file is delimited or fixed width. If it is delimited, there would be a character such as a space, comma, or tab, separating one column from the next. If it is fixed width, spaces were used to line up the columns.
Great. So what are we talking about here? Importing files into Excel. So this here is, you can think of it as a more advanced feature for Excel. Why would we want to import? Now, if you notice, our spreadsheet is for entering data, creating headings and then typing in data inside the columns and so on. So you have to go and create tables, create headings, type in your data and all of that. So there's a lot of work, a lot of typing. Now, say for instance, this information was already created somewhere else. Instead of you going and type back all of that information into spreadsheet, you can actually import it. And sometimes importing, it works a little better than copying, because you might be thinking, why can't you just copy and paste? Well, sometimes actually copy and paste is the most basic way of importing. Copy and paste is actually the most basic way of importing. By clicking on something, copying it, pasting somewhere else, that's the most basic way of importing. The most common way of importing. But say for instance now you already have the data typed out, you can use an import option to basically put the data into the table, and when you import, it actually does give you a bit more features, not features, options compared to copying and pasting. So let me show you guys what I am talking about. Now, an important thing to note is that this data that you're going to import into spreadsheet, this is an important point. You have to have a way to distinguish one column from another. That's a very important to take note of. When you're importing data, remember tables are made up of columns, as you can see here. One column, another column, and so on. Tables are made up of columns. So this data that you're going to create, you must have a way to distinguish one column from another. How do we distinguish one column from another? We use what is called a delimiter or fixed width. So basically, a delimiter is a character. So you would use a space to separate the data. You would use a comma to separate the columns, or you would use tab to separate the columns. Or for fixed width, you would use space. So those are some of the ways that you can separate the column. So how do we create this data? Well, we can actually do it in Word, or we can do it in a text editor. So I'm going to open Notepad. So this is Notepad. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to type some data inside. I'm going to type name, and I'm going to press tab, one tab, name, grade, and class, enter. So remember, I'm only pressing one tab. So name, company, tab, that tab, from 4. We need a long name. And I press tab. Notice I'm pressing tab, and I'm going to enter a grade of 34. Tab, class 4. I need another long name. Tab, 21 is the grade, and 54, 56 at the class. Now, question: do you guys think this data is gonna align properly when I import it? What do you guys think? Any guesses? No guesses?
Sir, I'm thinking I'm probably gonna be wrong, but I'm gonna say it's gonna import just like that.
Just like how it is?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Good try. Alright. Now, let's try it out and see what happens. So notice I saved the file. I went to save as, save, whichever one, and I saved the file, the text file. So, I'm going to go to spreadsheet now. So basically what I just did, I just created some data in a text file in Notepad. It could even be in Word. And I used a single tab. That's important to remember. I used a single tab to separate all of the data. So I'm going to go to the spreadsheet. I'm going to open a new sheet. And I'm going to go to data, the data tab. And this section on the left here is the import section, basically. If you notice, it has a from text. I'm going to click on that. It's going to open a box for me to navigate to the text file that it just created. So I'm going to go to desktop. And I'm going to click on the text file that it was create. And I'm going to click import. Now, this is where I need you guys to pay attention. If you notice, you have a preview of the table. And if you notice, it actually imported correctly. We have our correct columns. We have the name column, we have the grade column, and we have the class column. Now, the person that answered earlier that said it would import exactly as we see it here is actually partially true. It would actually import like this here if we did not choose the correct delimiter. Remember we mentioned here in this chapter, this paragraph here, we need a standard way of separating our column, whether that be a space, a comma, a tab, whatever the case may be. Now remember, I mentioned I use tab to separate my columns. So because I use only tab, it recognized those tabs and accurately separated my columns for me. Now watch what is going to happen when I choose colon. Notice everything appeared inside of one column, column 1. Everything is now grouped together, they're now bundled together. Why? Because there's no colon inside of this, inside of my data. I'm going to pick comma. Notice it's the same thing. I'm going to pick equal sign. Notice it's the same thing. But when I go back to tab, notice it is correct here. Look, I'm going to change the file once again. I'm going to delete the tab space and I'm going to put comma. I'm deleting all the tab space and I'm going to put a comma between all of the data. So this data that you're creating, it's not important to align it. The importance is not aligning it. The importance is used in a standard way of separating your data. So the standard ways that we have is as mentioned here, space, comma, tab, colon, semicolon. Those are all ways that you can separate your data. So notice I use comma to separate all my data. I'm going to save my file. Go back to spreadsheets. And let me see if it's actually going to pick it up. I'm going to choose semicolon. That didn't work. Okay, it actually did update. Notice I'm seeing the comments there. I'm going to choose back tab. Notice it's now giving me everything in one now. But notice when I click on comma, notice everything went into their correct column there. Are you guys following up to this point?
Yes, sir.
Good. So remember this text file that I created, the important thing to remember is you're using a standard way to separate the column. You have to imagine the column line. Imagine the column line running from like this here, going like this here. Well, based on where the comma is located. So imagine whatever shape column line that is. And then you have to choose the correct delimiter that is separating your columns. So once you choose the correct one, comma, you're going to click on load. Give it some time to pull in the information. And notice it nicely pulled in the information, changed up the colors, and all of that. And that is actually how you import your data. So instead of typing back over everything or copy and pasting, you can use that option to import your data. Good. So that's basically it for importing data, importing files. The last part is actually linking files. So, well, you guys are going to read the chapter. I'm just going to show you how to, what basically you need to remember. Now, so for VLOOKUP, if you think about it, doesn't VLOOKUP work by, if you think about it, doesn't it look like it's functioning by linking a file, a cell to another cell? So I think I deleted all my files, but like for example, if you wanted this letter D here, let's look at, for example, this Jahim, this 70, if you were using VLOOKUP and you wanted this 70 on another sheet, it would appear here if you used VLOOKUP. So it was kind of like if you were linking those two cells together. Because if this 70 was to change, it would also reflect back inside of this sheet here. Now, we have a much more simpler way of linking cells together if you don't want to use that VLOOKUP. So let me delete. So I'm going to use sheet 1 and sheet 4. Now, I'm sure some of you accidentally come across this here. When you press the equal sign to create a formula and you click on any one of the cell, if you click on the sheet, you can actually click on any one of the cells and it's going to link that cell. So if you notice, I now have 70 inside of this cell here. Notice 70 here, 70 over here. So if you look at what is inside of the formula, notice we have equal sheet 1 and exclamation mark. Notice there's exclamation mark. It's indicating that whatever is before it is the name of the sheet. If you notice at the bottom here, you have sheet 1. Notice here it's sheet 1. So that is what is before the exclamation mark, indicating it is the name of the sheet. So whatever is after the exclamation mark is the name of the cell that you are linking. If you notice it's B5, so if you go over to sheet 1, notice it's cell B5 that we linked. So I'm going to do it once again. Equal anywhere. You click on the sheet that you want, any sheet, and you click on the cell inside of that sheet. Now once again, say for instance you did it by accident, you don't want to continue anymore, you press the escape key. You press escape and it undoes everything. So how do we link once again? Equal, click on the sheet, click on the cell, enter, and you just link to that cell together, those two cells together. So whatever is in that one cell, say I change percentage to chart, is going to reflect inside of that cell over here. So those two cells are now linked with each other. Are you guys following?
Yes, sir.
Alright, so the last thing now, you can actually link two files together. So I need to open two files. I need to open two spreadsheet files. Now, just like how I linked these two cells from two different sheets, you can actually link cells from different worksheets. So say for instance, I have this random text here, and I want whatever is here to appear over here on the right hand side. It's actually the same process, but if you notice, I needed both open at the same time in order to get it to work. So you press the equal sign and you simply click on the cell in the other sheet and you press enter, and now I have the same thing over there. So once again, enter, click on the cell from the other sheet, enter, and you have your linked cell between two workbook. So whatever I change over here is going to reflect over there. Now let's look at the formula that was just created. Notice we have the name of the cell that we just linked. Notice it's using absolute addressing. Notice we have the exclamation mark, and whatever is before it is the name of the sheet. And notice here now we have a new part. We have square brackets, and whatever is in the square brackets mean that it is the name of the file or the workbook. If you look at the very top, look on the left hand side to the very top, in the center of the file, notice it has book 2 here. That's the name of the file. So that's why we have book 2 in the square brackets here. So that is how you link cells between sheets, and how you link cells between workbook. Are you guys clear?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, that's basically it for our content. So, anyone with any questions before we wrap up? Any questions before we wrap up? Any clarifications? All right.
No, sir.
Good. So in revision, we looked at chapter 7.6. Remember, what are the different type of charts? Remember to choose your charts appropriately. And we looked at how to create our chart and how to modify our chart. So remember these questions here, all of these questions from 7.4, 7.5, all the way to 8. You guys have to complete for next week. All the questions in yellow. And you guys are going to practice all of the exercises from 8 all the way to 19, also for next week. So we're going to be looking at the questions and the exercises for next week. 7.7, we looked at the different options we have for printing. And then lastly, we looked at how to import our data and how to link cells together, basically. All right. Any questions once again before we close off? All right. Well, if no questions from you guys, we're gonna wrap up here for tonight. Please ensure you do your work for next week. Enjoy the rest of your night.
You too, sir. Goodbye.
Goodbye.